Welcome to our streaming API workshop. My name's Stuart Gardol. I'm the lead builder engagement for BuildShip, and it brings me great pleasure to be talking to you about streaming APIs today. We've got a good session planned. We've had some new developments in the streaming space, in the low-code streaming space. So it's sort of timely that we're talking about how we can make our user experiences better and our whole app development better, really. So let's kick off. Right, I'm going to kick off with a bit of a I'll kick off with a bit of an agenda around what we're going to cover today. And we're going to sort of talk a little bit first up about why are we here? What are we talking about when we're talking about streaming API responses, and why should we care? And what is it all about? And how are they different from our more traditional API responses, which are the REST APIs? So let's, and then we'll go into sort of talking more about the full stack space, and how does that look in the low code world? Because in traditional app development, it's all very constrained in their own little front end, back end, database worlds. But in the low code space, we're a bit more dynamic, and so what does it mean, and where does it all sit, and how does streaming APIs kind of fit into all of that? I've got a couple of examples to take you through, riding by the seat of my pants a little bit, but these will be fun. So we'll literally be building out some low-code examples in BuildShip, and some of them in FlutterFlow as well, around how we can do some text-to-audio streaming, and then how we can really enhance that user experience with the AI assistant in a FlutterFlow app. And then we'll have some questions. So look, let's kick off. First off, when we talk about streaming, what are we talking about? So when we talk about streamed APIs, instead of normally when you make an API call, it's all sent and received in one chunk. And normally that's fine. Normally that works absolutely perfectly. But streaming APIs are stateful, meaning that they manage a connection with the session and the context that they're in. So unlike REST APIs, which are stateless, effectively, they just handle each individual request. Requester makes the request, response comes through. It's all sort of independent, whereas streaming API can actually keep updating itself. And this has two real main benefits. So number one, improved performance for one. The app can start processing data immediately. The user can start processing data immediately. And there's this word latency, which is becoming, more and more used and more important, particularly as we come into the world of how we build AI into things, and how real world communication comes in. But latency, we're always trying to bring down latencies to as small as we can. And streaming APIs really help deliver on that, because we're starting to deliver the data earlier and quicker. So that's number one, and that sort of leads into the second point, which is all about just that enhanced user experience. We're always trying to deliver the best, better, iterating on how we can make our users have a more frictionless experience in our apps, for want of a better word. How we can make our apps feel faster and more responsive. So that's sort of how streaming APIs work. I'll talk a little bit about BuildShip, and then I'll talk a little bit about how BuildShip fits into the kind of wider ecosystem. So BuildShip is a back-end visual low-code builder. And you can think of it a little bit like an AI-powered kind of workflow accelerator. And its core role is to sit into that kind of back-end development where you might be developing an app or a business process, and you need just that system that sits behind the scenes that does all of the grunt work, really efficiently, and just delivers the data beautifully to your front end or beautifully to your database, and happy days. So with BuildShip, we sort of take the angst out of building APIs effectively. If you've ever built an API from scratch in like traditional development land, it can be a bit of grunt work. They were never my fun thing to do. But when you're talking about BuildShip and building APIs and workflows, it's really just quite a visual process, because you're just talking through, what are your inputs? What are the things that are happening to the data as it moves through, and then how does it output out the end? So to help make that really easy for all of our users, there's a whole ton of these templates, pre-built workflows, and tons of integrations as well. So hundreds and hundreds of integrations. And then if there aren't the integrations with the service that you want or need or have in your business already, we've got this incredible, internal generate with AI tool. And look, I know everyone's integrating AI into everything at the moment, but this really is kind of like super integrated into everything that BuildShip does, because it was built there from the word dot, so effectively it knows everything about your workflow and can kind of get in there, and like if you need a node to connect something to something else, it'll be able to build that for you. Just a little bit of data. So it's super interesting, super responsive. And I think that the thing that sets BuildShip apart from, other workflow builders or automation platforms in the space is that everything is super open to you. While we call ourselves a low-code platform, we're not a black box, and you're able to take away your code. You're able to see the code that goes into all of your nodes, and more importantly, you're able to edit it and action upon it, and take it off in a completely different direction if you so choose. Don't have to, but you have the option. And I think as someone that's come into low code sort of from the ground up, that's a really nice way to be, because your skills develop and grow, and BuildShip really has the ability to kind of just expand as both your app and skill sets or business need grows as well. And then we've got this magical ship button, which just turns everything on and makes it all happen. And it just sits there and works in the background. So there's thousands of pre-made workflows. We've got hundreds of nodes, lots of integrations, and more being built all the time, by everyone in the business. So super passionate about BuildShip. And then I'll get on to my slides for excellent. All right. You know what that's called? That's called using an old version of your deck. Right. This is a great way to talk about where BuildShip fits in the entire low code and frankly software development ecosystem. So if we're talking about traditional software development, you'd always talk about who are your back-end developers and who are your front-end developers and who are the database lackeys. And in the low-code world, you know, those lines are kind of blurred, and that's a good thing. It's honestly a good thing, because you sort of have to think about it all, but you're thinking about it all. So certainly in my app development experience, you know, I started out on the front end space, really thinking that was the world I was always going to live in, surprisingly enough. And then, you know, at a certain point with the low code tools that we have, you do end up needing that back end that really is all about the grunt work, the engine room of your app. It's the place that stores all of your business logic, all of your APIs, and that sort of sits there in the background, just making everything happen. So BuildShip fulfills that role really well. And I think more and more, as we start talking about security in the low-code space, and as low-code apps become bigger and more important and more out there, it's going to become more and more important that we're talking about how are we securing our business logic and business rules to make sure it's all secure, because the front end isn't necessarily the greatest place to store them always. Although, you know, builders like FlutterFlow do an excellent job of securing them in certain ways. But really, in the realm of the front end, it's you know, and FlutterFlow is a great example of this. It's all about your UI and your user experience, everything that your users actually see and interact with. You know, really, it's all about creating that beautiful, like, you know, business logic and just frictionless experience that your users all love. So your front end will often, you know, in the low code space, certainly handle all of your platform support and your client side logic. And you sort of want to keep them separate. And then over on the third sort of pillar is that database side of things. And the reason we keep them all separate is really around security. You know, you don't want any one system compromised, and ultimately nothing should be stored in you know, all of the one place. And the good thing about the way BuildShip kind of operates is we're really kind of database agnostic. We'll really work, you know, think about all of the database integrations we've kind of got. Is really covers the entire gamut, you know, Firebase, Superbase, right through to, you know, SQL, MySQL, MongoDB. Yeah, I mean, you name it, it'll be there and be integrated in. And so, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, what front end you use. It doesn't matter what database you use. You know, BuildShip is there to kind of act as the oil in the gears. And these components all together kind of form that complete set of technologies that really anyone that's kind of had gone through the experience of building an app from start to finish and right through to customers and beyond knows that you do end up kind of needing to touch those three sides of the coin relatively quickly. Well, it's necessary, you know, in fact, to get there. So what we're really privileged of in the low-code world, I think, is that we get the option to kind of choose, mix and match. It's a bit of a pick and mix around, you know, how do we want to join these things together, and what are the creative ways that we can combine our front-end tools with our back-end and our databases to build new and really super interesting things that haven't happened before and aren't constrained by, you know, old school, you know, more traditional kind of app development ways of thinking. So I think of this image, and I've stayed on it for probably far longer than I should have, but it's really your full stack app building template. You know, each circle represents a powerful set of tools, capabilities at your disposal, and really your challenge as a low-code developer is to, you know, combine them into, you know, ways that are going to delight your users. And that's that. So I think it's probably time to talk about some examples. And we're going to start off with our text to audio streaming example. And we're going to see how streaming kind of helps facilitate the process and make the user experience a whole lot more enjoyable. So I'm going to jump into BuildShip, and we're going to go to this flow here. So what we've got here is an example of a BuildShip workflow that starts out with a REST API call, just a standard REST GET request. And it heads over to ChatGPT and gets it to write a poem. Lovely. And then we're using 4.0 here, but we could also use any of the models that support streaming, and everything back to 3.5 Turbo does. And obviously there's costs and speed considerations to have in that discussion. But this is a really good example of how streaming isn't just between your backend and your end users. It's actually between the business processes that you have going on in the background, right? So instead of OpenAI having to completely finish what it's doing before going on to the next thing, BuildShip allows it to stream its response progressively through to the next node, which is our 11 labs node. So what we're getting to have happen is we're getting our poem to be read back to us. And I think I chose this voice relatively randomly. So this will be an interesting one to see how our poem comes out. But effectively what's happening here is that our 11 labs node is able to take on that data quicker because it doesn't have to wait for OpenAI to finish its lengthy poem on the wintry woods, which could go on for some time. So we'll see how we go. But what we'll have here is that able to more efficiently deal with the data and then stream it to our end users. So we talked about the magical ship button. Here we go. And so we're going to test out this workflow once we get our endpoint URL, which is right here. So in this example, we can just copy that endpoint URL and get our poem. I said it could go on for some time. As you can see, it's streaming the response right I was told you can't hear. That's quite sad. Anyway, I'll have to post that to you later. You'll have to believe me that it was quite a delightful poem, actually. Yeah. So as you can see, and not here, it was coming through progressively, right? So, and you can even see that that marker there, moving back because it's adding more data, right, into the stream. So that means that your users can get the data back quicker than they otherwise would have to, otherwise be able to. And I came back here to BuildShip just to show you exactly how quick that was, because there's only seven milliseconds in that workflow to get that all completely done and our stream response through. All right. So they're a really good example of, there's there are a number of different streamed API responses out there. It really depends on the API that you're trying to use. It may or may not support streaming, but if it does, it's a really great way, along with a lot of the other things that you can do in BuildShip, like having things run in a parallel process or in an alternative workflow that's happening at the same time. So there's a whole lot of different ways that you can make your backend business logic run more efficiently, and this is a really great example of that. The next example I'm going to show you is our streaming AI assistant. And I'm just going to tee this up. Alrighty. So, all right. So here we are in the template section of BuildShip. And there are hundreds and hundreds of different templates that talk through all of the different integrations that we have within BuildShip. And, every time we make a new template, we often make a new video on YouTube as well to go along with it. So you'll see a lot of these come up, and, a lot of our users love them, use them all the time. I've used a ton of them a lot. And so I'm very familiar with a lot of them. And I wanted to show some of the assistant builders we've got. So one of the really great things about BuildShip is it has this ability to integrate with OpenAI's Assistants API. And what that means is that effectively you've got this AI assistant at your disposal that you give access to whatever tools, documents, business logic that you want, and it remains secure, while and only sends off exactly what you need back off to your front end or off to your database. So what I wanted to show today was just how we go through building out our streaming AI assistant and how that looks in a front end. So here under assistants, we're going to go down to streaming assistant. So this is our workflow. And you'll see how visual it is for the start of things. So really, we're just kind of going node by node. And we'll see here in the orange, things we have to address. So all we need to do is put in our API key, which you can securely store in BuildShip secrets. And that's a really, really one of the key benefits of BuildShip is the ability to store your credentials, your APIs, your tokens in a vault, effectively. It's stored in Google Cloud Secrets Manager. And I mean, it's brilliant for the fact that once you put something in there, you're able to use it and reuse it, and everyone that has access to your workflow is able to put it into a node, but no one can ever find out what the credential is. Again, not even you, really. It's incredibly difficult to find out what they are. So we can store all of our keys and credentials, and you can see here I've got somewhat a few of them in Secrets Manager, and just easily pull them up by going into Secrets. And OpenAI. Now, we're going to get an assistant ID from OpenAI, and we need one of those pretty much every time we use the assistant platform. And we get that from playground.openai.com. com. I always do that. So here, under Assistance, on the left-hand side menu, we'll get a new assistant, and we'll just call it Streaming Demo. Maybe not in all caps. Now, all you need to choose here in the OpenAI Playground is your model. We're going to choose 4.0 Mini since it's just come out. Whether you want your response as a JSON object or just purely as text. In this example, we'll just use plain text. And up here, we'll say that we want our response to be streamed. We just copy the assistant ID back into BuildShip. You don't need to do anything else in Platform because everything else will be handled by BuildShip. So now we need to give our assistant some instructions. For this assistant, and it's an example I've used a fair bit because it's a nice one to demo. And you'll have to bear with me while I make the instructions up from scratch. But we're going to get our assistant to research a topic on a website that we give it. So there's a few sort of core rules that we need to follow whenever we're building instructions for an OpenAI assistant or any AI assistant, frankly. You need to sort of, number one, tell it what its role is. So you are a, right? You are a web research assistant, and what its task is. Tasked with gathering information from various websites. You should also say the type of response and the tone that you're expecting from it. You will respond to user questions in a friendly and witty tone, but always accurately and distinctly. The user will give you a website or URL, and you will get the information from it. Now, the next thing to do is think about what tools do you want to give it to use? What data do you want to arm it with? And that's, I think, sort of the really exciting part about at the AI assistant nodes is that you can kind of, you really choose how powerful it is and how much knowledge it has and how creative or not it can be. So in this example, we'll say, when you are given tools to use, you must follow the guidelines. And that's really important because we need to make sure that it knows that it has rules to follow and it can't just go off on its own. Guidelines. When you begin, use the get website tool to get the page text from the web address the user provides. Analyze the data and answer the user's question. It's just a simple one. Respond succinctly in a accurate and sourced manner. All right, let's leave it at that for now. You'll come back to this box a fair few times. You'll always be tweaking these instructions. It's really it's quite interesting, and certainly as models change and expand and grow, you will be doing that as well. So here we want to add in our node to give it the tool to go off and scrape that website, find the data that our user's asking for. So here is our Node Explorer. This is where there are hundreds of different pre-made nodes and executions and integrations that cover everything from Airtable, Algolia, Anthropic's Claude, AWS, Discord, into the Google nodes. There's some FlutterFlow. There's a lot of really powerful Firebase and Firestore nodes. I'm not going to go through them all, but what I will land on is our utility nodes just at the bottom here. You can see all of the integrations. And there's a lost him web scrape web URL tool. Exactly the one we want. Now, when we add nodes into our assistant, we need to be really descriptive and be consistent as well. So the name of our node, we've called it earlier in the instructions, the get website. I have to check that. So that's the name of our node. And we want to scrape a given web URL and return the text context. Yeah, so that's accurate. So here, there's this button here which lets you assign the AI assistant to provide that data that's in that node. So we've said that the user will provide the URL. So here we click this data and we say that the URL, it's the URL, so that's correct. So the URL to scrape to find the users, to answer the user's question. All right, and we'll use the body. So now that's all we need to do. We'll hit ship, and I'll show how that looks in our chatbot widget, which uses streaming to deliver its responses. And I can do a bit of a comparison of how that looks to some, our more traditional REST API calls. So here we click our chat widget. This widget is a really versatile web-based widget. If you're just testing out any of our assistant or chat APIs with clients or other customers or broader in your business, it's a really easy way of just super testing it out. A real frictionless way. No one has to install any software. No one has to do anything too exciting. So it brings through our endpoint URL already. All we have to do is say that our response is a stream and apply those changes. Now we've got our button down here, and this is where we just ask it a question. So we're going to ask it all about, tell me about OpenAI streaming nodes from docs.buildship.com. All right. Wonders of our logs. Let's go in and have a little look. Looks to be having a little bit of trouble having that come back through, which is quite interesting. All right, here we go. Here's our stream response. That should be starting to come through. What we might do is just refresh our chat widget and give that another go. I'm going to blame that on my dodgy internet. See how we go. All right, so let's give that another try. Maybe let's ask something easier. Just, tell me about BuildShip from buildship.com. Did I apply those changes? I can't remember. And then you can see our streamed response coming back through. So a much better user experience in terms of just, it feels more responsive. It doesn't feel like your app has hung. The user doesn't know what's going on. I'll show the alternative. A non-streamed chat response like this. Will look like this. And it has to sit there while the entire response is loaded back from OpenAI. Actually, it will sit there and it will deliver it all in one big chunk. So that's the real advantage of our streamed API responses. I also just wanted to point out that FlutterFlow has just introduced the ability to support streamed API responses in their front end, which is really exciting for our low-code development community, because previously our APIs had to all respond, in that one big chunk, and we weren't able to get that great kind of user experience that we get from a chat widget. So I wanted to head over to marketplace.flutterflow.io and just give you a sense of what we've been doing with the FlutterFlow guys, just around, integrating with the wonderful work that they do. So here we've got the streaming AI assistant that coincided with FlutterFlow's support of streaming APIs. You can come in here, and this is a chat widget that you can load directly into FlutterFlow. You can clone it, and it's literally as simple as changing a couple of lines. So there's a YouTube tutorial video that came out a couple of days ago that's been really popular. So go in and take a look at that. I'll put the link in the description below. You clone this template, it's free. And then there's the BuildShip workflow that goes along with it. So they really do work quite seamlessly, hand in hand, and through that process, you're able to deliver your front end and back end in a really seamless, beautiful user experience. And yeah, everyone that's used the kind of evolution of this template has really enjoyed it, and we've had some fantastic feedback. And in fact, keep giving that feedback. We love it. You can join us over on our Discord community, which I'll give you the QR code link for in a second. But we're probably at the time for questions, I think. Alrighty, here we go. Hit me with some. I tried to import YAML file into FlutterFlow as an API. It asked me to update my free account. Is there another way? Actually, there is. So you do actually need a paid account to use this the wonderful feature that is, the transferring of your YAML file over from BuildShip into FlutterFlow, and it's so good. It's so good. You just go like export API and then you import it in. That's great, but it does cost money. So the super easy way is just copy your endpoint URL like that, and then head on over into FlutterFlow and say you've got a project. Just head into your API call section and you just add it as an API call. Your URL that you copied just goes in there, and literally any of the other parameters that you've built out in BuildShip will be over here. In under any of your request parameters or body settings, and you just add them in. That's, and also, if you've got to use a prompt like here in the in one of your nodes, that it's coming from body, and it's the message field that it's looking for. So you just come into FlutterFlow, and this is a post request. You'd add that in as your body, and you have it as a variable called message, which is a string. And then FlutterFlow makes it pretty easy. You just type in, this just has to be a JSON object. So it's message, and then you just drag down message. And that's all it is. So everything else is pretty much built out for you. If it was a get API call, well, then you choose get instead. And then you have query parameters, right? So here you just add your query parameters in, and it's exactly the same method. So message, is it a specific value or does it come from a variable, and you can just add it straight in there. So that really is the seamless kind of way that we make that that interaction work. And then when you get into more advanced kind of API calls, there's also a way for you to get the JSON object that you're going to get from BuildShip and plug it straight in to FlutterFlow here as a data type. And we've got a video on that called Update Output Schema, which is a huge time saver rather than adding in lots of manual variables. All right, what we got? If I was to set up a chat with some predefined questions in the instructions, what would be the best way to extract the answers to certain responses and then put those in fields in a database? All right, so you're going to ask a number of questions in your instructions. So let's head back to BuildShip and have a think about how we might work that. All right. So we're going to hard code instructions. Okay. So we're going to say, as the guidelines, you must respond with these answers. And it's 1, the thing, 2, the second thing, and 3, the third thing. Now, the way that you would, that's the way you would tell your assistant to do it. But then finally, the final line is your response must be as a JSON object using these fields or this schema. I'll use these fields. And you literally write it out like a JSON object. So we'd say answer 1, maybe. Answer 1, answer 2, and answer 3. Now, oh, if I could type, that'd be great. So now, back in playground.openai.com, remember I toggled off having a JSON object as the response. You'll need to toggle that on. If you're identifying that you want a JSON object as the output, yeah, you'll need to toggle that on here in Playground. So one other thing. Now, when your assistant responds, after it's gone through whatever tools that you've given it to use, it'll output something that looks a lot like this. And say you want to put it into a database. Say you want to put that straight into Firebase. And we'll just create a document. And that data would just literally be the same data that you got from that node just then. So answer 1, answer 2, answer 3. But you don't even need to type it out like that. You just need to use your variables toggle here, go OpenAI Assistant, and go, in this instance, you wouldn't use the streaming node, you'd use the regular node, and you'd just use the response from that node, because you've already given it exactly how you like it to respond. Have any more questions? Oh, good. So I'm not using FlutterFlow. How can I integrate with a streaming BuildShip endpoint? Are there docs for it? So you're not using FlutterFlow for your front end. You might be using Webflow, Bubble. There's tons of them. Yeah, there are absolutely tons of docs. So yeah, you would have heard, you will see me reference docs.buildship.com. We are literally in this, updating this every single day. And we come down here to this connect BuildShip with section. And we have just, this isn't the exhaustive list by any stretch, but FlutterFlow, Bubble, I mentioned Webflow, Framer. And there's often videos on all of those, along with, extensive documentation. So, yeah, and then you can also see as well the integrations that we have here. So, integrate with a whole lot of different AI models, messaging, payment platforms, the works. So definitely head there. Would also send you towards our Discord community, and a great plug for our Discord community, because I've got a slide on it that I got to a bit too early. There's our QR code for our Discord community. Look, super vibrant, active Discord community. In fact, I think it might be a low code community on Discord. It's really great over there. We're able to help you one-on-one, help you on your way with your chip journey or your low code journey or wherever you happen to be on your journey. So the whole team are over there, and we're on that all the time. So come over and say hi. Or alternative, we're always looking at the YouTube comments, good and bad, mostly good actually. It's been nice. And it's always nice to get some lovely comment from our community. So yeah, we'll leave there. I think what I do have one more slide on is just a bit of an exciting. Do you want to start from scratch? There's a bit of excitement happening around the office, I have to say. V2, Mark II, imminent. And if you're interested in seeing more about that, being part of that development, very exciting development, I have to say, of the BuildShip platform, head over to buildship.com/V2 and stay up to date with all of that. That's all coming very soon. Now, it's been great to share streaming APIs with you all. Thank you for spending time with me on my first solo live stream. I hope to do more of them. I hope you found it enjoyable and useful. And let me know in the comments. And keep watching our channel. We're always doing new and interesting things. I'm always building random little things. I like to set myself little, how much can I build in 20 minutes kind of challenge in BuildShip and just knock something really cool out. And I think that's a great way to kind of keep your skills up and have a lot of fun along the way. Well, thanks everyone.